Welcome to another episode of the Southern African Institute of Government Auditors, where we look at various issues that face the members of SAIGA. And of course, the leitmotif, the main focus is on promoting accountability, performance, and good governance. And one of the experts in the field is Mariana Strydom. She is a veteran of 35 years experience. She's a consultant now. She joins us to discuss ethics in the area of auditing. Mariana, pleasure to have you with us, and welcome.
Thank you, Tim.
Now, one would take for granted that the auditing field, by its very nature, is where ethics is paramount, right? Because you have to check the work of other colleagues and pronounce on them. But auditing itself is still affected by the question of ethics. What are the key ethical questions for people in the auditing profession?
You should first be sure about your own values, because that drive ethics all the time. But there are a lot of standards that you have to comply with, and it's a very compliance area, but ethics is coming out of yourself. If you start with ethical behavior all the time and making sure you're consistent, you are a person of your word, what you promise, you deliver, and that is also in the auditing field, because your clients don't want to name you a person that, you know what, I can tell that auditor anything and everything will be fine. I will get out of this qualification very quickly. You should know your stuff first, you should be knowledgeable, and then thereafter you should apply it consistently.
Well, I mean, obviously the expectation, like as you pointed out, is that you should be competent and should have integrity in the work that you do. But it must be difficult trying to be an independent and objective individual in the field of auditing. Let me use an example of, if you work for an auditing firm, how do you assert your independence and objectivity, given that the firm, for instance, may be having a client service provider relationship and they may want to retain a contract? How do you make sure that you retain your independence in that context?
Again, as I said, as a person, you should stand proud, you should be knowledgeable, and then you should understand the work. People do respect you if you deliver on your promises, if you do the work, you listen to them, but you're not a pushover. And for a company to be ethical throughout, you should make sure that you're not dependable on one client, and that the relationship with that client becomes so warm that that it is loyalty versus the truth, and that you have a responsibility to report according to your standards on the one hand, and on the other hand, you also have to have sympathy, as well as an ear to listen to the client and his background, and you should know the knowledge. You should have knowledge of the business all the time. You should know your client, and you should make sure that this relationship is all the time professional. Because the moment that you compromise any relationship, then you have to compromise all the time. And you should have a very good memory, because if you start taking corners, you should remember what corners you took.
Now, because the work is more focused on public trust, establishing trust overall, right? Now, what happens if you have to disclose certain sensitive information? What stance should an auditor adopt in that situation? I mean, at what point do you disclose information that may be regarded as confidential by the client, but you do so in the public's interest. Where do you draw the line?
I think that's a very difficult question. Again, you should know where you can speak and should speak out, where you have a legal responsibility to do that. But you should always have confidentiality of your client. But if there is a material irregularity, that should be reported as it should. Your report should not be made public out of your office. It should be coming from the client. And you should make sure that whatever you do is according to the standards that you and the work ethics that you have to apply. Um, if you can't do it according to that, then you should walk away long before that. And it is very difficult to um, not speak to colleagues or other people if you see things in the media and things are not the right version of what you have experienced during the audits.
Now, we also take the concept of competence for granted generally in different fields, not only in auditing. But what should auditors be always mindful of when it comes to their competence? I mean, is there something you can say regarding ongoing training and so on?
Yes, I think you should be always know the pronouncements of your industry, what is going on, be part of conversations and training. If you're part of the Auditor General's office, you get normally all the newest training. If you're in business outside as a consultant, you have to make sure that you update it with the latest. And that is the legal part. That's all the guidelines from your National Treasury and the PFMA. And always, when you get a new client or become part of an audit, find out what is this client about. Know the background of this client. We always have a joke about knowledge of the business, but that's very, very important. Because when I walk in and you hear that often, that the CFO of the CEO called the senior manager or on the job and said, you know what, every time I have to teach your learners or your staff what is my business about. I don't like that. So you should be confident, but not overly confident that you know everything all. You should make sure you understand the business. And out of that information, you should ask the right questions. What is this business about? What did you hear about this business? What is your risk area? So you should identify even before you walk into an audit. You should be enrich you with all the knowledge that you can get out of previous reports, out of legislation that's applicable in this industry specifically. Some entities do you need this legislation, departments should need this legislation, and you should find out what type of entity it is. You should start there and what is the applicable legislation on that, and read it up and understand your business. And then you can do a better audit, and you can also you not take for a ride in any conversation because you're confident enough to have a good conversation on an issue.
But being human beings, sometimes we can be put under pressure. I think from the point of view of the auditor, for instance, where senior managers or the clients themselves tell you to manipulate your findings and report something else instead of that which you found in your investigations and auditing work. What do you do then? How does one manage that type of pressure?
That is very difficult. Time is always a problem, and if somebody wants a thing very urgently, very quickly, then you always have uh, questions afterwards, and you have to take out the fires. I can recall I was responsible for all our sector education training authorities while I was with the Auditor General. On that stage, it was 25 of them, and I was the senior management responsible for all of them. And and I always tease and say, when the CEOs phone me and they talk Afrikaans to me, I know they're in trouble. But you should know what is the issues on the table of everyone. You should not make sure you don't uh, become that you're so stressed that you don't know the one from the another one. You should know the client again, and then you should make sure that you take a deep breath and then you go again. But you shouldn't compromise that time and stress compromise the output that you deliver, because that will keep you in trouble afterwards. If you report something that shouldn't report, or that you change, you discuss a change but you didn't document it, from an auditor's perspective, it's not documented, it's not done. You should make sure
Okay.
that your supporting documentation for whatever your opinion is well
It's always
documented.
there. Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm thinking of the question of incentives, for instance. What if the service provider, or you as the auditor, you work for a company that is incentivized in a context where the question of customer satisfaction is placed above everything else? What do you do in that context?
I think that came back to, again, what is your values and your moral responsibility to yourself as well. But if if you be influenced by these sideshows, if I can call it like that, and not focus on what you're supposed to be do, I think you have to make a very hard decision on this. Um,
Mm,
you can't make you can't be referee and player all the time, and you can't make sure that you to chase the target for the month, blur your responsibilities and your opinions, as well as your the output that you give, because then you should be consequent and people will know you. If you stand proud and you stand high, they will not necessarily come to you. They will take a easier target. So you should make sure that you be known and that you respect for
mm.
your knowledge as well as your integrity.
Well, let's talk about things that are happening in the country, especially from my point of view and members of the public's point of view, are happening mostly at local government level, and it's got to do with financial management and so on. One wonders why so many municipalities seem to be having the problem of reporting. What is going on there, you think, and how can that situation be resolved or improved? Because it seems now that the auditing in those instances is done more by the media than the auditors themselves. Obviously, I would like to believe that they come across the wrongdoing that might be happening in any entity before anybody else, but we don't really hear from them. Why is that the case? What is the situation? Firstly, let's start there.
Okay. Um, the difference on the three tiers of a government that you have, the departments, then your entities, and then local government and provincial government, is that it makes it very difficult, because local government, the accounting for authority like the mayoral and so on, they are politicians. They're not necessarily appointed for the competence and skills in the area. Um, and therefore, it makes the decision process very difficult. The influences I think most of them do have their own agendas, political, and not necessarily for the best of the organization. Um, so that makes it very difficult. Getting back to how do you, the audit does not pick up any wrongdoing before anyone else. Um, it is also, the auditors have the following process. They can't audit everything. They have to follow a risk approach. And therefore, and we also, after the time, the auditors, they're not going in with that you pre-audit, if I can say it like that. So if somebody wants to use information for their own political agenda, it will be in the media long before the auditors came there.
And in emerging times or modern times, the evolving times, the digital technology related stuff is also important, the protection of privacy, protection of data. Do you have anything to say regarding that, your comments on that?
It is very difficult because we all have the cyber attacks. We do have, none of your information is anymore private. If anyone is skilled enough, they can get everything of you. Lately I was being part of a risk assessment, and I was stunned with the information that I get on people busy with a forensic investigation. So that is very, very, everyone can get everything with social media. Be careful for that as well. And then fake news, because people jump on the comments on any of the platforms, and that is not very responsible.
Let's retrace our steps now, Mariana, as a veteran and a very experienced person, consultant. Just give me the ABCs of what to consider when you're an auditor, right? And the kind of scenarios that you may be confronted with. In other words, just give me practical examples and let's deal with it on an ABC type of basis. What should you pay attention to?
Again, you have to use your experience and your knowledge to identify red flags all the time. But sometimes it depends on where your level of review is. That makes it very difficult. I can recall, and you will also know, there was the Fidentia case that was in the CETAs while I was there. And it was the CEO on that stage, the Friday before he was arrested or taken in, he accused me that I don't know his business, I don't understand the environment, and then the next day he was in court. So it's very difficult then to stand, and you doubt yourself as well. So as an auditor, again, make sure it's documented. There's a trail that when you say you review something you did, your papers are in order, your opinions are based on facts, and don't be a corridor auditor. Make sure about your stuff and be knowledgeable. That is the ABC. You can't say that one say this and this one say this. You should be sure, and you have to be compliant to your standards as well as to what is required from you as well as a person.
Are there, as we conclude, any particular areas that you think are becoming more and more complex for up and coming auditors that they should take note of and improve their judgments and performance?
I think my experience sitting on the other side of the table sometimes now with the auditors is that the people are very reliant on their qualifications and not on their experience and their compliance with the standards. They very indecisive. They not really want to take a stance against something. So they will rather say they will come back. So be knowledgeable, document, because if it's not documented, it's not done. And make sure you're credible. What you promise to your auditee, you do. And if you say you come back with the right decision, so that you can make sure that they respect you as a person, they respect the organization that you work for, and that they make sure that they also not fear you, but out of the respect, they will do it not for the auditor's sake, but what is right.
And of course, the world depends on the work of auditors to maintain the trust that is required when it comes to financial reporting. Is that correct? And that is why we're having this conversation with you, Mariana, that notwithstanding the technical competence of auditors, it is important that they have the ethical muscle, so to speak, so that they can do their work without fear or any favor.
And the last thing is protect your relationships. Don't become too friendly, too open. You are professional all the time. Conduct you accordingly.
Thanks very much, Mariana Strydom, a veteran of more than 30 years in the profession, talking to us about ethical issues or questions confronting auditors today. Much appreciated, Mariana. And we brought you this episode on behalf of the Southern African Institute of Government Auditors. Focus always on transparency, accountability, and good governance. Until next time, goodbye to you.
Thank you.